I just wanted to again welcome you to our February webinar. We are super excited to have Tony Felice of Felice+Whitney Agency with us, speaking about PR basics, in-year tips, and everything in between. For this webinar, I wanted to let you know that we're actually inviting questions throughout. We will have some time at the end for question and answer, but if this is a lot of information, great information, and if you have a question, feel free to type it in that chat box that's located on the left-hand side on the bottom underneath the presentation area. A few other housekeeping details. Just want to make sure that your webinar is coming in clear and loud enough. So if you're experiencing any issues with volume or sound or speed quality, please make sure that you first off have closed other programs or other windows. That will drag down the speed of this webinar. And for any volume issues, please first make sure that your volume is up to the appropriate level. I've definitely been a victim of not enough volume. And if you're experiencing any severe issues, you can always log out and then click back in. Sometimes resetting the webinar is all that's needed. I also would like to let you know that we are recording this webinar and we will make it available to you after it's done processing, which would probably take about 24, 48 hours at the most. That's all that I have for housekeeping, and I want to keep it brief and get it over to Tony. So just to introduce our wonderful speaker here, Tony Felice has had a 28-year career that has taken him from the halls of the U.S. Congress all the way to the studios of Hollywood, California, working on public policy, strategy, and media relations for large multinational corporations and small businesses alike. He is a fantastic board member for Local First Arizona, and I'm going to keep it at that and turn it right over to Tony whenever you're ready.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm just getting over a bit of a cold, so I may be a little gravelly, so I apologize for that. And also, I wanted to say that I wanted to congratulate you for being here, because PR is one of the most difficult things you can do. And I wish I could give you a magic bullet, but in fact, what you'll learn today is that it is pretty difficult, but if you know some insider tricks and you understand how it works, you can be successful. If you're working with a PR professional, which of course we recommend, then you'll know now how hard their job is and how they're working on your behalf, but also we'll give you some insight into helping them be better PR people as well. So I'm going to move pretty quickly because we do have a lot of ground to cover. So if you have questions or concerns, jump in, and then we can always take your questions at the end. So as you can see here, this is a reality bubble, is what I call it, and these are all of the things that influence the center, and you guys are here in the center. And so how can you compete with all the noise, right? Here's some facts. News coverage is not a right. It is earned through hard work. Many of the news stories that you see are actually the result of pitching reporters really well, okay? They are looking for stories. And while it's harder for small businesses because you don't have the brand recognition that other large brands do, it is possible to generate PR locally and nationally, but it takes time. So today, what are we going to cover? What is PR? What to pitch, how you should pitch it, how you should be prepared, other ways to get your story out, and then maximizing your news coverage. So what is PR? PR is communicating with the public through a variety of ways that is honest, objective, straightforward, and unbiased, okay? And when I say those things, you can clearly see what it's not. PR is not marketing, it's not sales, it's not clickbait, it's not anything sensational, and we hate the word spin in PR. Spin has nothing to do with what we do. Our job is to tell the truth in interesting ways. So if you ask yourself, if the purpose of PR is not awareness about my business, then why should I do it? Well, because it establishes credibility and reputation for your brand or your spokesperson, and it is basically an endorsement by the media, which is a powerful thing. Some of the terms we're going to be covering today are listed here, and they'll be in the presentation that you'll have later, so you can refer back to them. But basically, the most important ones here is an angle is a unique feature of your story. Pitching means literally just telling a persuasive paragraph of information about you and your business and your story. To syndicate something means to send one thing out over several channels. Pay for play means it's a news station where you actually have to pay to be on that station. Coverage, clips, hits, all refers to the stories that are told about you. This is the reality of what we're up against every day. What you're seeing here is a snapshot from a fairly famous TV show about a newsroom. And on the left is an associate producer, and on the right is the lucky intern who is holding in her arms what appears to be over a foot stack of papers. What you need to know is that those are the press releases that have come into the news station overnight. It's our job to get in that stack, but it's even more important to be noticed in that stack. And that seems monumental. The average reporter here in Arizona probably gets about 100 to 200 emails a day. What else are we up against? Well, here's a screenshot from a local news station, and you can see a little frowny face up at the top. Why? Because the top 8 news stories are about death and destruction. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in. There's a term called it, if it bleeds, it leads. And unfortunately, in the local news TV, that is often the case. You can see more editorial over on the right-hand side, a story about a dolphin and then a dog surviving. But basically, you sort of get the point. In the past, we used to talk about you want share of market or you want share of wallet. Today, we're talking about share of attention because the average person has a shorter attention span than a goldfish. This is according to Microsoft report from 2 years ago. So basically what it's telling you is that you have a nanosecond to capture people's information, attention rather. So before we begin, we want to sort of establish, like, what are we really trying to do here, right? Basically quality. You want quality. In order to get quality coverage about your company, you should choose top 20 news targets. Like if you could dream about any place you'd want to be, write them down, figure out who those are, build relationships with people in those news sources before you even pitch them. Don't send the same story to everybody. Offer yourself as a source without even pitching your company, right? You can email the news desks and tell them about what your field of expertise is and give them your bio. Be available and relevant. You must give objective information or data that you have about your company, and always find unique angles to your story. We're going to cover that in a second. So what is a story? A story is something that's interesting and relevant, timely. It could be local, but it's so much more than that. These are things you should not pitch. Please don't ever do this. Don't pitch an event that isn't unique. Everyone has a charity golf tournament. Don't pitch anything that doesn't have an interesting backstory. Please don't pitch a sales promotion or even an award unless it's like the trade press or maybe the business journal. And don't pitch your opinions unless they are couched in very objective advice or how to do things. And surprisingly, don't pitch a thing. And we're going to talk about that right now. So here's a brand new toy. Guess what? That toy is not a story. This toy helps autistic kids. Okay, now we're getting closer. Jeremy, who lives in Mesa, is severely autistic. And for the first time, he was able to communicate with his mom. Here is the story. If you couch this with autism statistics nationwide and here in Arizona, and the backdrop is this creativity can toy with the true stories about Jeremy and how his life, him and his mother's life has changed, that's your story. Here's a new hybrid flower. Guess what? The hybrid flower is not a story. The farmer, a former mortgage banker who discovered it, that could be a story. His flower's been found to have promising compounds for fighting cancer. That's an even deeper story. Facts about botanical-based cures for cancer research out of U of A, there's your local tie, that's even better. But a student may be chatting at the farmer's market, brings the flower to U of A, and a new compound is created. And so your story talks about the power of community connections that are essential to business. And this is how things get done face-to-face. Now that's a story. So here we have a new software program from a local CPA firm. Guess what? The CPA firm is not a story. Even the software is not a story. Now, maybe the CEO who designed it and saw a need after seeing hundreds of failed businesses and created this solution, that could be a story. The top 5 things every small business should do at tax time or risk going out of business, that is a story. This mobile software, that's the backdrop to the story. And then highlighting 2 customers who use the software and it saved their businesses, that is a story. And one last one here. This is an event that we did. And I'll jump forward a little bit. You can see the apparatus being built. Whoops. Uh-oh, where did I go? Technology, you gotta love it, right? Anyway, without running the video, you can see over here, there's all kinds of athletes. Look at this kid's face. Shock and awe. We have men and women going head to head with up against one another. We have adaptive athletes, elite adaptive athletes, meaning they may have a prosthetic leg, competing against traditionally abled athletes. It's quite a spectacle. Guess what? That event that was a few weeks ago, that was not the story. The founders of this company are veterans, and that's kind of part of the story, right? Because it's a different narrative. Many of the competitors, like I said, are elite adaptive athletes. That's part of the story. They came from around the world to compete. But Vanessa Cantu, a local Mesa athlete who overcome her challenges to be in the best shape of her life, despite being in a wheelchair, and she holds the U.S. women's title as an adaptive athlete. That is a story, right? That's who we pitch. This event is the backdrop to that story. I think you get to the point that a story is so much more than the thing or a person. It's about all of the things. Think of it like a film, you know, the characters and what they've overcome and the challenges they faced and how you've been a solution. One of the things I really want you to know is that data is king. Wherever you can acquire data, whether it's your own or industry, it's incredible. Let me use an example. We had this company called Mortgage Marble. It's the 3rd most popular online lending site behind LendingTree and Fannie Mae, and no one knew about them. And they wanted us to generate PR, and they wanted to be in the New York Times. Can you imagine being me, having to pick up the phone and call about a company called mortgagemarble.com? You cannot imagine how quickly the phone would hang up on me. But what we did have was, here's this company that has all this data, right? From 750,000 mortgage applications. Oh my gosh, guess what we had? We had credit scores from around the country. So we had the top 10 cities and the bottom 10 cities. We could talk about the closing costs by legislative district, right? So we had all this, a ton of information, and we started packaging that information and pitching it to the media with our CEO as a source. And they started to take notice. But we even took it even further. You can partner with a company called Harris Interactive, and you can ask people online, 3,000 people, a survey question. Harris is owned by Nielsen, right? So it has street cred. And what we did was we asked 3,000 Americans whether or not they were going to hold off on their purchasing decision for a new home until after the presidential election. Then we couched it with the data that we had. Guess what? We landed that story in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, here at CBS Money Watch. But here's what's even more fun. You can repackage the same information and present it differently. And here we did How to Find a Dream Home in 30 Days or Less, Girl. And this was published in Cosmo, Cosmopolitan magazine. And we also, this infographic was also published in USA Today. The strength of it was from the data that we had, supported by trends, etc. So you're looking at this Venn diagram right here and you're thinking, wow, this is kind of overwhelming, right? And the reality is that's you in the very center here. And you're surrounded by a couple of things. One is, what's the story that you want to tell, right? And then over here to the right, well, what's relevant in the world right now? What are people talking about? Is this something that people are interested in? And then what is the reporter or the producer or the news station, what do they care about? And when all of these things collide, that's you. Okay, we're going to talk about pitching right now. So here's an example of a bad pitch. A new bead-based dye created by our company, Smith Industries, will revolutionize the hair color industry. Starting at $4.95 a bottle, the new organic dye is not only a savings over most hair dyes, usually retailing at $9.99 or costing more than $100 at salons, but it will color your hair while saving your scalp from dangerous chemicals. Can you guys figure out, just by looking at this, what you think is wrong with this pitch? There's lots of things wrong with this pitch. First of all, does it sound objective to you? Is there any industry data? Why are there prices in a news story? That's advertising, right? What else do you think is wrong with this story? Well, the most important thing about this story is actually the last sentence. And here's why. This is the same story. Today, Smith Industries announced a new organic dye made from beets that will change the way hair color choices are made by consumers. Looking to dye your hair red? Think again. You may be slowly poisoning yourself towards cancer or even death. Every day, more than 20 million American women change their hair color, either at home or in a salon. Every hair care product available on the market today has more than 15 toxic chemicals. Believe it or not, it requires more licensing and testing to become a hairstylist or colorist in the United States than it takes to be approved by the FDA for the hair coloring product that they're going to use. The requirement for testing and approval in America, none. The fact is that of the 15 chemicals present in most hair dyes, 12 of them are known carcinogens, according to University of Wisconsin professor of biology, Robert Jenkins. 1 or 2 of these chemicals can cause severe allergic reaction that could lead to death. Wow. You can't believe that that's the same company and the same product, right? And guess what? The president wasn't quoted in this statement, right? An outside source with street cred, as we like to say, is quoted in this story. So to recap, what was good about it? It was written objectively. It contained facts and information that would interest the reporter. It was contrasted against trends or data nationwide. There's no sales pitch here. And one tip is to go through your news release or your pitch and remove all the adjectives, okay? And then opinions are in the form of a quoted expert or testimonial. No one cares what the president of the company whose story it's about really feels about it. So you have a nanosecond we talked about before, 8 seconds to capture someone's attention. So that means that subject lines are everything. And if you can almost tell your whole story in a few words, that's awesome. So here are the most popular ones for us in the last 2 years. Excuse me, is that you on fire on pump number 3? Harris poll, 94% of Americans want creative experiences for their kids. 94%. Vampire changes sex, kills millions. It's a good thing. Can't say I'm allergic to peanuts in Italian. There's an app for that. The short life of an obnoxious cupcake. How fun are these subject lines? And some of them are quite serious stories. For example, the vampire, that's a fish that can change its gender, and it killed millions of invasive species. So it was actually a really cool thing. Before you even begin, you got to do some housekeeping. Get your act together, right? Before you go out on stage, you're going to know your lines. You're going to be prepared. You're going to have your costume. Sets are going to be designed, right? Same thing for your business. Plan out your year. Look at what stories are coming up, what holidays are coming up. Are there seasonal changes? Look at the editorial calendars of magazines. They're available online. The Phoenix Business Journal's editorial calendar is online. Prepare your media kit. Get your act together. If you prepare a release, we'll go over that in a second. Make sure your biographies are up to date and there's background information available. There's descriptions of your products, why they were created, what the inspiration was for that. You have high resolution photos with captions and credit. You have B-roll. That's video that's everything but someone being interviewed on camera, right? So B-roll of the manufacturing process of an agent touring houses with clients. Make sure your website's up to date with events and source your stories, your sources, your testimonials, people that you've helped, you save their businesses, their lives. In some cases, get their permission and their contact information and photos of them and have it be available. Heck, interview them on camera and post those interviews on YouTube yourself. What you can effectively do is become your own brand newsroom, right? Instead of relying on the media always and begging them to tell your stories, tell your own stories and get them on the internet and give them life, okay? Here's a great example that we've shared with you of a website that has a really great media room. That's an example. Media room on their website. If you're going to do a news release, then please put it in what's called AP style, which means Associated Press. Okay, and there's some basics here. Your contact information should be at the very top, and also make sure contact information is at the bottom at the end of the story. Your subject line, we talked about that. The date should be written just like this: Phoenix in all caps, comma, ARIZ, period, Feb, period, 21. These are things that reporters see. If they see this is done correctly, then they'll immediately take interest. And then have the main part of your story right here. Don't wait till paragraph 5. Get it right up front. What is this all about? What's your hypothesis if this was a thesis, right? Then have all of your supporting information. This little thing here means it's the end of the story, and this is called a boilerplate. This is where you can be a little bit more sexy about your company and awards that you've won and things like that. You leave all of that out of here. All of the quotes here are generally from people that are outside sources that substantiate your story. Here's an important thing to do too. Send this, paste it into an email, okay? If they want a PDF, they'll ask for it. But if you send a news reporter a PDF, it'll probably be bounced by a spam filter, okay? And also, you can't copy and paste on some computers with a PDF. So which media should you be telling your story to? That is a great question you should ask yourself. And so please do me a favor, do all of us a favor, watch TV, right? And get to know the shows that cover stories like yours, right? Because on TV alone, think about all the different places there are. You have morning shows. It's like lighter fare, restaurants and events. The mid-afternoon shows are generally pay for play, and you can kind of tell sometimes, but they still want really good editorial content. You can sometimes get on there for free. The evening news is for harder news stories like that beet hair dye we talked about. And then each of these segments during the day, they have producers themselves. So you have morning show producers at Good Morning Arizona, afternoon producers at 12 News. You have evening show producers, and most of them have early evening and later evening. Like there's the list on ABC 15, and then their harder news is later in the evening. And then there are special projectors. Because do you know how long the average news segment is on TV? 8 seconds. That's a lot of work for 8 seconds. So sometimes a long show producer, you'll get a few more minutes, but morning show TV, often those segments can be between 4 and 6 minutes. And then the Arizona Republic has different sections. You might have a CPA firm, but you have a travel-related story. Okay? Get to know who these reporters and anchors and producers are. It's easy to find on the internet. And the business media, there isn't a ton of media in town, so you really have to have your act together, right? If it's a small pond, you want to make sure that you're a big fish. And by being a big fish, I mean you just have all your ducks in a row. Don't forget bloggers are out there too. Sometimes they want to be compensated in some way. Okay, who to pitch? Websites often list editorial staff. You can find lots of these people online. Just Google the topic. Let's say Toyota recalls. See who's written about Toyota recalls in the past. That's how you narrow down the person you should talk to. Constantly keep up to word with keywords and terms, and do Google alerts, where you can set up alerts for industry terms and see what kind of news stories are being written about it, or your competitors, or even yourself. That way you can see how many times you've been mentioned online. You have to pick up the phone and call to follow up on stories, but please call at the right time. Don't call the newsroom in the middle of a broadcast. That's not a good thing. Or deadline. Phoenix Business Journal, their deadline's Wednesday to get the paper ready by Friday. So kind of figure out what those things are. And you can call the front desk and ask them, what's the deadline? When are people mostly busy? And then be confident, because 75% of news actually comes from people like you calling and pitching their stories. My other tip is to find a connection with people locally. Jamie Soretta at 3TV, she has a segment that focuses on locally made things and cool local companies, right? Pat McMahon loves local heroes. He loves authors and at local events that have some sizzle. Scott likes sports. Donna is an Emmy award-winning investigative news journalist. You got something meaty you're trying to reveal about your industry, she's one of the people you want to call. Here's the process. First, send your paragraph pitch. That's all you need. Then, if they want a news release, if they ask for one, make sure you have one ready to go. Politely follow up the next day by email, and then you can call after that once. And don't be a pest. You can be a pest if you know that they absolutely have to do this story, right? And you know in your heart if it's a story that absolutely has to be told. And use a wire service. It can be expensive, somewhere between $450 and $800 to release your news nationally, but it helps with search engine optimization, and you can put that news release up on your website. And if you're a member organization, nonprofit, it really helps to show your members the reach that your news is getting. Here are some rules of coverage, and I won't go through all of them. Just know that you can be blacklisted in this town if you don't follow these rules. And it's a small town. Phoenix is very small. And word gets around. If you're not on time, you don't return phone calls. If your staff acts like they had no idea what's going on when a reporter shows up because you forgot to tell them, if you take reporters' calls off the cuff when you're in the middle of doing something instead of calling them back in a few minutes when you feel more prepared, all of these things will add up. And we built a reputation in this town for being organized down to the gnats, behind. And your word gets around if you're a good source. They'll call you time and time again. Send a follow-up note. Please don't send gifts to the newsroom. If you have a new product launch, unless you have a really strong relationship with the writer or the reporter, don't send them a cheesy package with your product in it. It doesn't really work. Your story should be strong enough on its own. Another tip to not necessarily relying entirely on the media, but leveraging the media to help you get your word out. Give some love to your events and holidays. For Hula's Modern Tiki, we brand every single holiday. We create posters, we do bill cards. These graphics appear online, on Facebook, everywhere. We hang the posters weeks in advance. We list our events to all of these sources that are listed here. Don't forget about Yelp. Yelp is often one of the top referrers to our clients' websites. Don't forget about the independent newspapers or sections, West Valley View or Go Gilbert. They're often looking for really interesting ideas around holidays, and don't pitch them 2 days before the holiday. They have deadlines that are usually weeks out. And leverage your email lists and ask your clients to send your email out for you a couple of times a year, and do the same thing for them. And don't remember, with magazines, they need that information 4 months in advance. Here's some of the technical. Please upload your news release to your site with the keywords in it. Take advantage of all the work that you've done. Leverage your news. Put it in your newsroom, put it up on YouTube. Think of yourself, create your stories as if you were the news source and get them out there. Be sure to put the logos of the news sources that covered you on your homepage. That leads to credibility. And follow up with a nice note. And then also follow people on their social media, but please don't connect with someone on LinkedIn unless you really know them personally.
We've got a question, Tony, from Marcia. She asked, do you think paying for Yelp placement is worth it?
Oh my gosh, that's a loaded question. I know that Yelp is getting better at what it used to promise, okay? I know for some of our clients, it has worked well. For others, they do better on organic search. My suggestion is to do a test. Don't get locked in anything long-term. See how it does over 3 months' time. But there is some value for you to showing up at the top of the list over top of your competitor who shows up if someone searches for those keywords. You're going to get your competitor over top of your listing. And really, the choice should be based on the strength of your reviews as well. If you've got tons of great reviews and a handful of bad reviews, because those are important to show how you handle bad things, then that could be a yes. I wish I had a yes or no answer for you, but that's best I can do. So something to consider. The Arizona Republic. Oh my gosh, we want to get our story in the Arizona Republic. You know, the hair dye story. Or we're going to die if we don't get it in the Republic. My whole self-worth is based on the fact whether or not my PR person got me in the Arizona Republic. Guess what? Arizona Republic has a circulation of a little over 275,000. If only 10% of those people see your story in the newspaper, that's about 27,000 people. But what if only 1.5% of them actually care? That's 413 people, right? That could be good. Could be great if you own one location, right? But consider this. Let's say you did a news story using video that is a small 8-second, 10-second, 15-second segment that feels really genuine and authentic. And you do a Facebook ad, not a boosted post, that's a waste of your time. But do an ad. You can target your community, geographic areas, and not only people who are interested in your subject matter, but on Facebook, you can target people who have actually done something in the last 48 hours, clicked like on a story about hair dye, right? Now, suddenly, you've got 63,000 impressions, 936 likes, 78 shares, 423 click-throughs, and a reach of 128,654. Is this going to make you a success overnight? No. George Takei tweeted an ad design that I did, and it reached like he has 7 million followers, and we had 56,000 likes. Guess what? There's a blip on the radar screen. The point I'm trying to make is that this is part of a larger strategy for you. So sometimes disasters happen, but I want you to remember this. Always remember that when a disaster happens, it's always an opportunity in disguise. So I'm going to use an example. We had a client, we get up at 3 in the morning to film a news segment with ABC 15. Katie Ramel came out to do it herself. It was all day. We had 5 sources. We had 3 locations. It was going to be at least a 6-minute story. And it got bumped. It got bumped 3 times. 3 times I had to call my client and say, sorry, the story's not going to run on the air. And boy, trust me, they freaked out. And they were talking about firing us because we couldn't get it done. And I kept saying, guys, we use this to our advantage because they feel bad. Do you think Katie feels good about spending all that time doing your story and it gets bumped 3 times? No, she's going to work hard on your behalf to make sure it eventually runs. Well, guess what? Lightning in a bottle is possible because that news story ran on the night of the Oscar telecast and it was teased 7 times during the telecast. Their phones rang off the hook the next day, but here's the thing. Their server crashed because it could not handle the traffic. We didn't talk about that, so make sure that you don't have the theory of unintended consequences, right? Because lightning in a bottle does happen, but it's only going to be small and short-lived. So that example I just gave you, they were super popular for a week and then things petered off. Guess why? Because they thought that PR was going to save their lives. It's not true. This is just part of a larger strategy. And PR is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So to recap here, kind of what we've been covering today, understand what PR is and what it's not, and learn how to tell a story. Practice, write your story, get feedback from your harshest critics, right? Choose your media targets and get to know them and care about them. It will show. Pitch a story. Don't pitch your company or your product or your event, please. Okay? Capture their attention in the first 4 words. And if you reach a reporter, get to the point quickly. And first ask them, do you have a quick second? Or do you need me to call you back? All right? So ask their permission first. And then be prepared. Have your photos, your video, your sources. Offer your source or even stories that have nothing to do with you because you know that Katie Ramel cares about news stories, about health, right? Please be truthful about why you're seeking publicity. Don't seek publicity because you want the limelight. Seek publicity because you have a really incredible story to tell that changes people's lives, okay? The rest of it's advertising and marketing. Plan out your year. don't wait until your project is done being built and going, oh, geez, we forgot. We want to generate PR about this. And the grand opening is 2 days away. And consider the power of social media. In particular, I'm talking about Facebook ads. Instagram really moves traffic as far as small little videos go. If they feel real and authentic, the word on everyone's lips right now is true and authentic experiences. And PR is probably the perfect example of where that's so important. Do your homework. I don't know if any of you have even Googled PR for my small accounting firm. There's so many free resources available online. And we've got some additional sources here. I love this one from Forbes. My name is Tony Felice from Felice+Whitney. We do tons more than just PR here. We do storytelling. Everything we do, whether it's graphic, whether it's a website, whether it's an ad, it all tells a story. Because that's really what people want, is they want to be moved and they want you to tell them a story.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tony. That was really a lot of information, and it just kind of breaks into the vast knowledge that you've got about coaching the media, publicity overall. So I'm going to give us a couple of minutes here. If you have any questions for Tony, feel free to type those into the chat box. And once again, thank you so much for your time. It's absolutely beneficial. One thing I did want to kind of put in there really quickly, you can also utilize Local First Arizona. We've got two major campaigns that we get a lot of media around. The first one is Buy Local Month, and that's around the holiday season. So looking out for that, we actually have during our two campaigns, we actually have a dedicated page that people can go to and find your business. We get a lot of media. We go out and visit lots of local places. The second one is during the summertime, and essentially we have participating businesses that print up a golden coupon, and you just offer something for 20% off. And during the summertime, when a lot of people are leaving Phoenix, I totally understand going to cooler weather. Many of us are still here, and we want to make sure that we get a lot of media and attention around local businesses during that time as well. So look out for that coming up in all of our newsletters. It's just a great way to kind of, again, think about those resources that you're already plugged into, and building those relationships is really, really important as well. I'm going to give people another minute here.
That's really great advice, Kendall, because you have no idea how many times the media call me and say, oh my gosh, we want to do a story about unique bridal gifts because wedding season's coming up, right? So be thinking about how to leverage your membership by thinking about, okay, Valentine's Day is coming up. So most couples fight about money. So, hey, I own an accounting firm. Maybe I should to talk to Kendall about, these are the tips that I can give to make sure that your Valentine's Day goes off without a hitch. And because these are the things that couples fight about when it comes to money. Here's my high-res photo. Here's some video of me talking about this. And pull that together, because you have no idea how many times we scramble trying to think of members at Local First that would be perfect for a story. We call them, they don't get back to us, they don't have photos available, they don't have any video. So you're actually doing us a favor by getting these things together and be thinking about that and helping us to help you.
Thank you so much for that, Tony. All right. Well, I think that you've covered it all. I would also just want to mention in the follow-up, I'm going to make sure that you have all of Tony's information. If you want to talk to him, use his services at Felice+Whitney Agency. Local First Arizona has also utilized the resources of this wonderful agency to really push out that story. It's all about that authentic and true story. So I'm just going to go ahead and wrap it up and thank everybody for their time, and look out for the next email from me. And maybe we can think about PR 201.
Yeah.
What's next, right?
This is literally the surface. It gets a lot more complex than this.
Wonderful. All right, everybody. Well, have a wonderful day, and thanks for tuning in.